Well, actually, if you ask me how would I assess the fighting against corruption, Ukrainian reforms in general, the rule of law reforms, I would answer that, the best recognition, acknowledgement of the success of Ukrainian reforms was given by President Putin 3 days before the large-scale war, when he had this address where he basically almost announced the war, and he listed all the anti-corruption institutions by names. He particularly talked in details about the judicial reform, saying that Ukraine is cleansing the top judicial governance bodies by the commissions with the participation of international experts. He named National Anti-Corruption Bureau, National Agency for Corruption Prevention, High Anti-Corruption Court. He said that Ukraine managed, to build a lot of institutions, but corruption is still blooming. I mean, why would he be that well aware about the results and achievements of anti-corruption reform if he did not consider this an existential threat to his own kleptocratic regime? So, obviously, not all of the reforms are complete, and we still have to do a lot of things, like have the full cleansing of the judicial system, because we started it with the highest bodies that are judges for judges. But it's very important that these judges for judges later on introduce the transparency and accountability practices inside entire judiciary. So those judges of the first instance and the appeals courts who were engaged in the malign activities, they should be dismissed and they should be brought to accountability. And that's something which this new judicial governance bodies need to do. We still have a lot to do with regards to real de-oligarchization, like the system for the criminal justice for high-profile corruption cases was built, it was established, it is operational, and it is investigating cases into the corrupt schemes of particular oligarchs. Basically, we were analyzing and saw that they are having investigations into schemes of all oligarchs, literally. So there are no untouchables. All of them are, to a certain extent, subjects of the high-profile corruption investigations. But if we talk about what are other pillars of the de-oligarchization, that should be the anti-monopoly reform, because oligarchs are making their super profits on the monopolies. Some of them are unjustified. Well, most of them are unjustified, and they give the tools for blackmailing of politicians, because if an oligarch owns all the production of chlorine, which is being used for the purification of water, then, stopping the supplies for the water supply systems of the chlorine obviously may cause the epidemic situation. And an oligarch can be using this as the tool, a leverage of influence over politicians to get some favorable decisions in his own interest. Otherwise, he would cause a huge epidemic catastrophe, which not a single politician obviously is ready to allow in his country. Same regards the markets of gas or electricity, gas distribution or electricity or other strategic sectors. So anti-monopoly reform is very much important, because the anti-monopoly committee is the body which has to be overseeing the market relations and has to be breaking the monopolies which oligarchs are misusing to get their extra profits. Obviously, the sustainability of the anti-corruption reform needs to be maintained, because as of now, these agencies are doing a great job. But the leadership of these agencies, the previous leadership's tenure was changed, and the new one needs to be selected. So to make long story short, Ukraine has achieved tremendous progress with regards to transparency. We have opened plenty of information of public interest, like state registries of beneficial ownership, of real estate, land cadastre. We moved all the public procurements from the corrupt paperwork into online auction system, which not only allows the transparency and competitiveness, but also that's an auction where all the bidders are reducing the price of the procurement, meaning that it is also saving money of the taxpayers. We introduced the most advanced electronic system of asset and income declarations of all public officials, which is a huge instrument of public officials' lifestyles monitoring. We have done a lot to ensure accountability in the high-profile corruption cases, and we are having already verdicts, real verdict sentences behind the bars for bribery or for corrupt schemes in the state-owned enterprises. This is a game changer. We didn't have this in Ukraine, and the pace is, the pace has been speeding up before the outbreak of the large-scale war. Right now, it obviously slowed down a bit, but anti-corruption institutions are still working. Whether this is enough, not yet, but this is already a huge progress, which we as the civil society are calling the European Union to recognize. And fortunately, as we saw from the European Commission conclusion, this progress was recognized, as well as the list of outstanding issues to be fixed in the nearest future was also offered. The situation is that the total destruction which Russia brought absolutely unreasonably and unjustifiably to Ukraine is actually the opportunity for us to rebuild an absolutely brand new country afterwards. And for us, obviously, it makes no sense changing one names of oligarchs on other names. That is why we as the civil society were very much pushing to get this EU candidate status for Ukraine, because for us, this is a framework of the sustainable reforms which we would be able to introduce in Ukraine, not only after the victory, because we believe that this will not be only the end of the war, this will be Ukraine's victory in this war. So, but even right now, we can already start doing some reforms. Same regards not only rule of law or anti-corruption reform, same regards basically economic reforms, energy reforms. Obviously, a lot of objects of the critical infrastructure, energy infrastructure, were destroyed. But it makes no sense to rebuild, thermal power plants which are working on coal. It obviously is the potential for a huge modern technologies which should come to Ukraine. So for us, it is incredibly important to introduce the necessary legal framework to make sure that we minimize any influence of the oligarchs and gradually get rid of them fully. Well, the biggest benefit is obviously a stable and prosperous neighbor. Everybody is interested in that. You can judge from Ukrainian experience, we do not have such a neighbor on the north and on the east, and it is a very huge problem for us. So the more stable and prosperous Ukraine will be, the more benefits the European Union will get from that. Ukraine is the huge market of 40 million people, meaning that economically, European Union is very much interested in approximation and harmonization with Ukraine. Ukraine's post-war recovery is the huge potential market for European investments. As I already mentioned to you, we will have a lot of reconstruction and a lot of rebuilding of Ukraine, and that's a huge potential for European companies, because they will know that they can invest funds and money into Ukraine, because Ukraine in the mid-term perspective and in the long-term perspective will be moving towards the European Union. So that's a kind of a security guarantee for these investments as well. I'm not even talking about, the kind of a moral dimension of people who are dying for 8 years under the flags of the European Union for the values which European Union is based on, like democracy, freedom, market economy. I think that this is a very good, sense of reminder to everybody in the European Union on what the Union is, what is the fundamental values of the European Union. And I know that this is very important for Austria as well, that the Western Balkans are also, the integration of the Western Balkans is also speeding up. I think that Ukraine's candidate status, which we as the civil society will use very strongly to put pressure over Ukrainian authorities to make the reforms, will also create a kind of a healthy competition with the Western Balkans, because that's something which we saw for the Central European countries, for the Baltic countries who passed this accession in the beginning of 2000s, that, they were competing among themselves, and this motivated and incentivized countries to do the reforms, to move to the EU faster. I think that from this perspective, Ukraine's accession movement could also give a good and powerful push for the accession process of Western Balkans, because we are not, these processes are in parallel, and they can strengthen, they can amplify each other. So we are not competitors. We are kind of part of one team of free nations who want to join this European Union family. If you take a look at public opinion polls, 91% of Ukrainians are wholeheartedly supporting Ukraine's accession to the European Union. The figures of the peaceful time were lower, but they were anyway like 60+%, which is still very big. Russian war of aggression, Russian war crimes, Russian atrocities have convinced even those who haven't decided, on what should be Ukraine's vector of development, because we understand that, our future is only there, is only with you in the European Union. That is why, and that's the dynamics which we have been seeing since 2014, when Russia first started their war and occupied Crimea and parts of Donbass and Luhansk Oblast. I don't think that this is something which would be rolled back. After everything which we have gone through, and we are still going through, it's an absolutely no-go for us, to kind of be discussing, about other possible, geopolitical vectors of our development. That is why I think here you might be absolutely sure that in the face of Ukraine, you will have the most, devoted people to the EU ideas, because we are defending these ideas with the lives of our best people, really best people. Just a few days ago, 24-year-old Roman Ratushny was killed on the east of the country. 8 years ago, he was among those students who were violently beaten by Yanukovych's Berkut police, riot police. And from that accident, the revolution of dignity actually started, because it forced thousands, basically tens of thousands of people on the streets who were demanding justice and who were demanding, the accountability for those who implied violence against Ukrainian students. Meaning that these are absolutely, this is an absolutely new generation of people, young people, who are thinking absolutely differently. And for all those people, the future is in the European Union. With regards to internal political fighting, well, that's internal political fighting. They will always be. Whether I think it is smart doing that now, probably not. But I think that even these tensions, they significantly reduced during the wartime. That is why I don't see that it's going to might be any kind of hazard to Ukraine's future, because Ukrainian society decided what they want. And minor fighting against politicians, I mean, they are in any democracy, in any country, that's inevitable, Well, we can be talking, about any kind of reconciliation or anything similar with Russia only after Ukrainian victory, full demilitarization of Russia, full denazification of Russia, full denuclearization of Russia, absolutely bringing all of them to accountability, starting from Putin, his generals, ending with the last soldier who have been committing atrocities and war crimes in Ukraine, as well as the big, sorry, which their people have to be asking and begging Ukrainians, for everything which they have done to Ukraine. Only after that, we could be speaking about how we could coexist with them. Before that, we have to consider them as an aggressor, either potential aggressor or existing aggressor, because, they are having aggression against Ukraine, but they are absolutely the potential aggressor towards the European Union. And you are right that very few are understanding that Russia is a hazard to the entire West and entire democratic world. And to coexist with this threat, we need to be investing a lot in Ukrainian resilience. Ukrainians should have super strong, much stronger, by much stronger, I mean with weapons, with equipment, army. We should have much better air and missile defense to make sure that they cannot throw their bombs on peaceful Ukrainian towns. All these things, as well as big reconstruction, renovation of our infrastructure, of everything which was destroyed. By the way, Russia has to pay big reparations. They basically need to compensate for everything which they have destroyed in Ukraine. So only strong, resilient Ukraine, which Russia will never dare to attack, is a realistic move forward for us before all these things that I mentioned at the very beginning, like demilitarization, denazification, etc., finally takes place.